Hey, my name's Peter Rosenberg, and I'm nervous about doing this. I've been talking about doing this show for a very, very long time. A show about that incessant need that I have to fill a void, to feel like I'm enough, to feel validated by friends, loved ones, women I didn't know, fans of me on the radio, anybody that I could find. Let me back up a little bit. So, like I said, my name's Peter Rosenberg. I've been doing radio and television my entire adult life. My first radio show, I was 17 years old at the University of Maryland, and I always knew that I wanted to be a performer of some sort. What I did not know, though, is that I would forever be seeking attention, love, and validation that would really never be enough. And as I've looked around in the last few years, I've noticed that not only are so many of my peers the same way, but now, with the advent of social media, people who never even planned on getting into validation-seeking work are also obsessed with it. Because everything is about comparing who we are on the inside to who other people are on the outside through that screen. So when I had my life explode back in 2018, I decided if I ever pull my shit together, I am going to do a show where I can talk about these things with other people who have been through it or are going through it. And that way, if someone else ends up in the position that I was in, they'll have a place to go. Well, I'm still a work in progress, but I did make it to the other side. So with that, welcome to the first episode of Validate Me. Hello, I'm writing you because I don't know where else to go. My wife of 6 years and partner of much longer kicked me out of the house. I received a text message from a woman I work with, and my wife asked me if I'd been talking to other women. She asked this question because it's something that I've done before. And when she asked, the truth just came pouring out. I had been. Even though I'd promised I would never do it again, I did. And truthfully, it went beyond talking. Not in a long time, but it has gone well beyond talking. And I don't know what to do. Do I tell her everything now? She says she's done this time. We've been together forever, and we're about to have kids. I don't know where to go or what to do. I also don't know how to stop this behavior. Every time I get caught, I promise I'll never do it again, and I mean it every single time. And slowly but surely, the secrets start again and again. And after every time I do it, I feel absolutely horrible, but somehow I find my way back to it. Why can't it ever be enough? It feels like it's been going on forever. I broke up with my high school sweetheart because I needed to see what other people were like, and that was over 20 years ago. And I think I just ended my marriage and my chance at a family because I still needed more. In that time, I've also become a bit of a public personality, which I always wanted. So you would think my little version of fame and popularity would make me feel better, but it doesn't. I actually think it makes it worse. I don't know what to do. I'm so embarrassed. What will my family think? What will her family think? Please tell me what to do and help me get through this mess. I wrote that message back in late October of 2018, except I didn't have any place to send it. So at that moment, I was like, somehow, if I find a way through this hell that I've put myself in, I am going to have a show where these things can be discussed. So here we are. I want to spend today telling you about how I ended up in this situation. I guess looking back at it, I had been struggling with this issue all the way back to middle school. Really, ever since there was the availability of like America Online and ways to communicate with people in different parts of the world, I would find a way to start having these conversations. And at a really young age, I started getting high off of it. I never recognized it as that until at 39 years old, I broke up my marriage. I never until that moment saw the pattern of doing questionable things and talking to questionable people and saying things that might be embarrassing if someone had read it or heard it, and worrying about it, and then promising I wouldn't do it again, and then doing it again. I didn't put all of it together. I know it sounds absolutely insane now, but at the time, and I think other people out there will relate to this, I always felt this was like normal behavior because I was a single guy. Like, you're a guy, you're always trying to talk to women, you know? And I'm not blaming society for that, but that's just what was in my head. That was at least the way I justified it. And then somehow as time went on, I started doing these things when I was in a relationship, but justified it by, well, I'm not actually physically doing anything. So what's the harm in a flirtatious conversation? And again, all of these things just sort of happened little by little over time. So fast forward to October 2018. Fast forward to what you just heard me read. I was sitting in this room and my ex-wife asked me that question. And all of a sudden, everything came flooding out. And what would happen in the days, weeks, months, and years that followed was an entire new life. In the end, that would result in really beautiful things that we'll get to. But in the immediate, what I set myself on was an unbelievably difficult and painstaking journey. And one that I hope through this show, we can help other people avoid. One of the first things I did in the days following this version of disclosure was started looking up different things online, Googling about the problems I felt I had. And I immediately found a 12-step recovery program. Now, we're not going to go into details of talking about 12-step recovery because one of the tenets of 12-step recovery is anonymity. But it is something that worked for me. And when I looked particularly into what's known as sex addiction, I found that I checked several boxes. And I suggest that if you're out there watching this and you have found yourself repeating patterns that you're not proud of, swearing that you're going to end behavior that you continue to go back to, doing things that puts your personal or professional life in danger, then I also recommend you look online for a program that suits you, because you will be able to find one. Now, for me personally, the most important thing that I discovered on my journey, and keep in mind, early on, my journey was with hopes that I would be able to mend the relationship with my ex-wife. Obviously, since you heard me use the word ex, you know that is not the way things played out. But at that time, I thought of it as twofold. I thought, I need to really curb this behavior, and if I change this behavior, then maybe my ex-wife and I would get back together. Now, other people were telling me, well, hey, listen, even if you don't end up back with your ex-wife, I did not want to hear that, because frankly, the idea of my life changing that much was just too much for me to bear at that moment. You know, one thing that I want to get to explore as this show goes on is how hard adult like divorce is. I really think it's become this thing that people just talk about very casually. I noticed for me, it was very quick to become a punchline to other people. And obviously now these years later, I can certainly make a joke about it, but it's a very real thing. I've unfortunately in my adult life been through my share or been close to people who have gone through their share of really, really tough things. And if you're in a long-term relationship, the explosion of that relationship, and at least in my case, especially if your behavior seemingly brought about that explosion, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. But again, we have time to get into that journey. So here I was. It's late October 2018. I'm 39 years old. My ex-wife and I were working on having children, and I thought we had really found our way there, and it seemed that that was on the horizon. And in 2 seconds, everything exploded. And as the questions were getting asked to me in the moment, I didn't know how to respond, so I was blurting more information. Again, everything worked out the way it was supposed to in the long run. But I will say to anyone watching this, should you end up in a situation where out of nowhere, there's a chasm, things just explode, and you end up disclosing information, I would really suggest you stop that disclosure until you're able to do it in a therapeutic way with a professional on hand. Blurting out the behaviors you've done that have shattered the trust of a partner, that's not the way to go. And it will do irreparable harm. I certainly know people who have recovered from it, but I know examples of people who could not. So I would just put that precaution out right now, that if you end up in that situation, even though the person will be screaming in your face, you tell me everything you did right now, you better tell me right now or else, tell me right now or else, go with or else. Go with or else. You need to wait and be able to have the conversation in a way that can be therapeutic and helpful. That is not a situation that happened for me and my ex. So I hit the streets. You remember the scene in Big when Tom Hanks is staying in like 80s New York by himself, and he's still like a 10-year-old kid, but in the body of this adult man, or 11, whatever, 12, whatever he is, 12-year-old kid. That's me. I was staying in a shitty hotel because my ex had told me, don't spend any money, but you need to be out of here. I just was trying to do anything I could. I was trying to do everything right. So I went to the dumpiest hotel I could find, and I sat there and I went to meetings every day, and I tried my best to just go to work and put one foot in front of the other. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it didn't go great. You could go back and watch the footage of my shows from late October and November and December of 2018 when I was on Hot 97, and you will see a human being who is not doing well. Now keep in mind, I was doing 2 shows every day at that time. Mornings on Hot 97, a legendary hip hop radio station in New York City, and afternoons on ESPN New York, where I was alongside the voice of the Yankees, the legendary also Michael Kay, and my friend Don LaGreca. My co-hosts on Hot 97, Ebro and Laura Stiles, everybody was affected by this situation because I immediately was basically incapable of being who I am. You know, what's made me a decent performer all these years is my ability to be authentic. The person that you get on the radio is basically the person that I am. warts and all. And I was in so much pain and I was so scared of what the future was that I was unable to share with everybody what I was going through. And that made it quite literally impossible to do my job. So I'm trying to put one foot in front of the other and work and go to therapy and hoping something will change. My ex-wife had no interest in communicating with me in a real way. She was irate. I would not hear from her all day, and then I'd get a flurry of like angry, crazed, and I don't say that disrespectfully, but just manic messages at night, and then I'd be up all night texting. I can't do justice to the nightmare that this situation was. And I know some people, may not be as sensitive when it comes to relationships, but I am. And I know that was a sort of interesting thing for people around me to grapple with, because they're like, wait a second, you're so heartbroken about how this whole thing went, but you're also stupid enough that you risked it all to talk to and meet up with strangers. And yeah, both of those things were true. I very much, enjoyed my relationship and did not plan on breaking it up. And yet also, I felt I continuously needed other people to show that they wanted me in some way. I've gotten to host cool shows on television. I've lived out many dreams. I've had articles written about me in really cool, prestigious publications. I get stopped on the street and people take photos with me, and all of the sort of things that come with being a somewhat successful public person. And none of it scratched this itch enough. And I kept going back to it. Like, does this sound familiar to anyone here? And that was just the most extreme examples. But there were other examples that I still struggle with to this day. The going back onto Instagram to see the like count, if a post doesn't do well, being disappointed, the seeing what other people are doing on their Instagram page that makes me feel like shit. And no matter how much friends or loved ones try to explain to me my value, it doesn't get full. All I can do is talk about it. All I can do is express the feelings that it creates in a format like this with you guys, and hope that there are other people out there that are as crazy as I am. And to be honest, it's not easy to speak about. I think this show is incredibly necessary because I think a lot of people are suffering with this, but I also think it's, hard to talk about. It's a little bit embarrassing. But I know, based on how much I see other people living in the vortex of the internet, that I'm not the only one dealing with this. We'll get to all of that. Let me wrap up the story. So in my journey through therapy, through 12-step, I landed on one particular practice that came to be the most helpful for my life. And again, I'm not done working. That was rigorous honesty. Being rigorously honest was the only kryptonite I could find for my addiction. I know that's kind of bugged out. And I know a lot of people probably don't want to hear it, because when you're in this world, particularly if you have a partner who you're doing things behind their back that aren't very cool, you find these ways to fudge the line, right? And man, the rigorous honesty thing was a scary proposition. But I got thrown into the deep end. When my ex-wife and I went to our therapy session after like 6 weeks, and I thought we were going to try to make progress, and all she did was demand that I tell her everything that ever happened in detail. Again, would not recommend doing that until you're able to do it in a truly therapeutic session. In our therapy session, I thought we would maybe be talking about a future. And instead, it was my ex-wife demanding that I tell her everything I had done. Again, don't recommend that. Even though this was in a therapy session, it was not in the right setting for us to do this, and it wasn't the right time. So I did that, and a couple weeks later, we had another session. And in that session, I thought we would begin our conversation to maybe some sort of healing. And she read a letter and said she wanted a divorce. And I went and dry heaved in the bathroom. So I basically got forced into rigorous honesty from jump because my ex-wife demanded I tell her all this stuff. So from that point on, though, it became about living my life with rigorous honesty with everyone. When people asked me what was going on, I'm sure there's some people in my life who got way more information than they ever wanted to get, but I just started, I didn't want to hold back on who I was anymore. I needed people to understand what I was struggling with so I knew that I would never struggle with it again. That meant uncomfortable conversations with my ex-in-laws, my parents, my brother, and most importantly, my now wife, Natalie, who from the very beginning, when I met her, I told her about all of my issues. And along the whole way, when anything came up, I reported it to her. And to me, that has become the saving grace of this version of my life. You know, again, I'm not perfect. I still struggle with, you know, the desire to feel validated. And I still feel myself getting sad for reasons that the average person would find stupid. And, you know, the theoretical temptations of it all still exists. But because I've gone down this path of rigorous honesty with my wife, I'm not messing it up again. I'm not. Like, I'm just not. Like, you know, I managed to blow up my life good, you know, and it was expensive, and not just financially. It was emotionally expensive. It was psychologically expensive. It was just personally expensive. You know, I lost relationships that I'll never get back with people who I cared about. And I have to own that was at least in part because of my choices. So when I really started to accept what had happened, it was like probably a year after the initial explosion, I started to accept that this might really be what my fate was. And I now had built the tools from the year of really intense program work, celibacy, prayer, meditation, attempting to be present. I put myself in every position I could be in to have something good happen. I put myself in every position possible to have something good happen. And at the beginning of COVID, of all times, something good happened. And I met Natalie. And now, fast forward 6 years, and I am sitting in this same living room, yet it's a completely different place, and I'm in a completely different place. And my wife is manning the camera today, and our 16-month-old baby is sleeping in the other room. I have not solved my problems, but I've made it to the other side. And I'm far enough along down the road to at least start to have these conversations with you and everyone out there who struggles with this stuff. Because guys, I fell into these habits and these problems pre the dating app era. I can't even fathom the incredible hamster wheel that some of you must be on with that dating app. The swipe right situation, that is literally, for someone like me, that is crack cocaine. The idea that at any moment I could just go onto my phone and see if a woman approves of me, has interest in me, oh, bro, I'd be on 5 dates a night. I would not stop. And I know that's happening right now with a lot of people. And it's dating constantly, it's sleeping with people constantly, it's chatting with a million people at one time, and it is creating a really dangerous pattern that's going to be hard as shit to get out of. So that's why we have to have this show. We have to have these conversations. Because I am here to tell you that if you don't deal with it, and I didn't deal with it when I was in high school, I didn't deal with it when I met my girlfriend in college, I didn't deal with it clearly when I met my ex-wife. And like I said, the cost of that was incredibly high. So we're gonna sit here every week and we're gonna have some fun and we're gonna have some laughs and we're gonna hear some ridiculous stories, but we are going to try to figure out what is going on with us that makes us continue to jump on that hamster wheel. If you want to be a part of the show, I would love to talk to you. validatemeshow@gmail.com and Validate Me Show on Instagram. Reach out whichever way works for you. Share your story, and we can get to it here on the show with me, with some very cool esteemed guests, people who have gone through it, experts in the field. We're all going to work together and try to make some progress on this issue that is clearly affecting more and more people. Thank you guys so much for being here, and we'll see you next week right here on Validate Me.